Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I never thought I'd find myself sitting in my apartment, staring at a blank wall, wondering how a person I loved so deeply could suddenly feel so distant. My name is Jasper, and I'm 34. I've been with Lila for 7 years. Not married yet, but the kind of relationship that people around us considered unbreakable. Though we've been together forever, we're meant to be kind. When we first met, Lila was vibrant, sparkling with laughter, the kind of person who made a room brighter just by walking in. I was quieter, maybe too careful at first, but she saw something steady in me. I worked as a freelance graphic designer, which gave me flexibility, but I always made sure she felt safe and cherished. We traveled, cooked together, celebrated small wins. Life felt balanced. Somewhere along the way, though, the balance shifted. The little things started to matter less to her. The flirty texts we used to send each other during the day vanished. She stopped laughing at my jokes, not because they weren't funny, but because her attention had drifted elsewhere. I noticed the phone glued to her hand more than me, the distracted smiles when we talked about future plans, the half-hearted hugs that felt like routine. I tried not to overthink it at first. Maybe she was tired from work. Maybe stress was piling up. She worked long hours at a marketing firm and often brought home projects, but still, I felt the shift. My attempts to reconnect were gentle at first. Dinners I cooked, weekend getaways I planned, handwritten notes hidden in her bag. I wanted to show her love, not pressure her. But every gesture seemed to vanish into the air. Then came the text. I'll never forget it. It was late one Thursday night, and my heart sank before I even opened the message. Jasper, I'm going to Miami with Owen this weekend. Don't worry about me. It was casual, almost indifferent, but my chest tightened instantly. Owen, her ex from years ago. Someone she told me was just a memory. Someone she claimed meant nothing. And here he was, suddenly part of our present. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I didn't call her. I stayed silent, because I realized that whatever I said, whatever I felt, wouldn't change her choice. The silence wasn't just empty air. It was a statement. She needed to see that I wasn't going to compete with ghosts, that my love wasn't desperate. It was dignified. I spent that night pacing the apartment, thinking back to when we first met. The laughter, the closeness, the promises whispered over late-night coffee. Was it all a lie, or had it just faded over time? I didn't know, but something in me understood. I couldn't force affection, I couldn't manufacture desire, and I certainly couldn't convince someone to value me when they had chosen someone else. By Friday morning, I made a decision. I packed a small bag, left a note on the counter that simply said, "I'll be back," and walked out without making a scene. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I was angry, but because clarity had settled in my chest. Love, when it's genuine, doesn't require desperation. And if she wanted to chase the past, that was her choice. I went to my favorite coffee shop, a quiet little place with green walls and warm light. I ordered a latte, sat by the window, and opened my phone, just to distract myself. And then it came. A single text from her. Jasper, I didn't think you'd stay silent. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I stared at the message for a long time, my hands wrapped around the warm mug. The words hit me harder than any argument could have. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't dramatic. She was just admitting, finally, that she'd made a mistake. It wasn't about her ex, not really. It was about her seeing what she might lose. And me, I had stayed silent, unshaken, giving her the space to reflect. That silence had done more than any fight could have. It was a quiet mirror showing her the weight of her choice. I didn't rush to reply. I let the moment sit. I let the coffee cool. And as I watched people walking by outside, oblivious to my little drama, I realized something important. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do in love isn't chase, beg, or argue. Sometimes it's simply standing still and letting the consequences of choices speak for themselves. I didn't respond immediately. I waited. I wanted her to feel the weight of the silence, to realize that love isn't something you can toy with. I spent the next few hours wandering around the city, trying to clear my mind. By late afternoon, I finally saw her text again. Jasper, I'm in Miami. Owen and I don't know. I made a mistake. Can we talk? Her words were fragmented, hesitant, almost pleading. My chest tightened, but it wasn't anger. It was recognition. She had finally acknowledged what I'd already known in my heart. That my presence, my patience, my quiet strength meant more than any distraction from the past. I didn't call her. I didn't fly down. I stayed put, grounded in the city I knew, in the life I had built for myself. I sent a single reply, "Wait until you're back." That one line was simple, but it carried weight. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't pride. It was calm. It was clarity. I had set the boundary long before she realized she'd crossed it. Now, I let her confront the emptiness she had chosen to leave behind. The next 2 days were tense. My phone buzzed intermittently, notifications from mutual friends, indirect messages, pictures from Miami. I didn't open most of them. I didn't need to. The absence was louder than any confrontation. It reminded me, and soon reminded her, that love abandoned is not easily reclaimed. When she finally returned, it was late at night. The apartment was quiet, the lights dimmed, and I was sitting on the couch, staring at the ceiling, letting my thoughts settle. She stepped in, hesitant, bags in hand, and froze for a moment. Her eyes were wide, her lips slightly parted, as if she couldn't find the words to bridge the distance she had created. "Jasper," she started, her voice shaky. I didn't respond right away. I let her search for the right words, let her feel the gravity of her choices. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was necessary. Finally, she whispered, "I shouldn't have gone. I shouldn't have." I held up a hand, not to stop her, but to let her understand. "I know," I said softly. "I didn't chase you. I didn't beg. I stayed silent because I wanted you to see what you were risking. Not because I didn't care, but because I do." Her shoulders slumped. Tears welled up in her eyes, unrestrained, but not loud or dramatic. Just quiet, sincere. The kind that comes when someone finally realizes the depth of what they've lost. I thought I was ready to forget the past, but I wasn't. I didn't realize how much you mattered. The words were raw, unfiltered. I didn't answer immediately. I let her confession linger, because it carried the honesty that every argument or fight could never produce. It was reflection, not reaction. It was awareness, not defensiveness. I stood, slowly, and walked toward her. Not in anger, not in triumph, but in steadiness. I reached out, lightly, letting her feel the warmth and presence she had ignored for so long. She flinched at first, then let herself be held, the tension of the past few days melting into quiet sobs. "I can't promise we go back to the way things were," I said softly, keeping my voice calm, measured. "But I can promise this. I'll always be honest with you. I'll always value myself enough to stay true to what I deserve." Her head rested against my shoulder, silent for a long time. She didn't speak, because words weren't necessary. The realization had settled in her heart. She had seen what she risked, what she could lose, and now the pain was hers to acknowledge fully. Eventually, she lifted her head, wiping tears away, her eyes meeting mine. "I understand," she whispered. "I really do." And in that moment, I knew that silence had been my strongest ally. Not confrontation, not anger, not chasing her back. Silence and patience had drawn a mirror, and she had finally seen herself. She had broken down not because I made her, but because she realized the consequences of her own choices. We didn't rush into apologies, long explanations, or promises that felt hollow. Instead, we sat together in quiet acknowledgement, letting the tension ease, letting reflection replace reaction. And in that quiet, I felt something I hadn't felt for days. Clarity, control, and the subtle but undeniable strength that comes from standing still when the world expects you to act impulsively. Sometimes love isn't about fighting or chasing or even forgiveness. Sometimes it's about patience, about letting someone face the truth of their own decisions. And when they do, that truth has a way of breaking walls without breaking hearts. That night, as we sat together quietly, I realized I hadn't lost her. She had simply remembered the value of what she almost let go. And in the end, it wasn't about proving who was right or wrong. It was about allowing space for realization, letting silence speak louder than words ever could. I don't know what comes next. I don't know if everything will be perfect. But I do know this: boundaries, patience, and quiet strength can be far more powerful than desperation. And sometimes the right text at the right time can be enough to change everything.